Hello and welcome back to everyone. Out to another edition of NXT Out of 10. And of course, it's the first NXT since Standard Delivery where we saw Tony D'Angelo capture the NXT Championship while Lola Vice won the Women's World Championship. So there was a lot going on this week's show. We got all of the fallout from that. And that's how we kicked off the show with Tony D'Angelo, the first man to arrive for the night, wearing his NXT Championship around his waist. He talked about his history in NXT that led him to the moment. Before naming Joe Hendry, who appeared. Il Ego and Ricky Saints then both made their own claim, but Darkseid arrived. Security then appeared, but a brawl still broke out between the wrestlers as we headed into a break. During picture-in-picture, the locker room came out to finally restore order. Robert Stone announced the champion and his three potential challengers would face Darkseid later. A decent opener, but it fell into Darkseid's standard that NXT has seemingly moved into recent months. After the NXT laid out Miles Bourne at Stand Delivery, it would have been made more sense for Darkseid to back him in the pursuit of the North American title. It made little sense, as it took many people to clear up this distraction. Setting up a clear hierarchy from the top guys and the rest, really. So yeah, moving on into Sol Rooker versus Izzy Dame. While Dame's had her size advantage, Rooker responded with her signature athleticism, turning the tide into a commercial break with moonsault off the bottom rope to the floor. The back and forth action turned into Rooker's favour until Sean Spears saved Dame from a Rooker moonsault. Zarya took advantage of Nico Vance's distraction to spear Rooker at ringside. Dame over that sealed the upset win for Dame. Afterwards, Zarya told Rooker that she would tell her when she was done, sealing the same with a forehead kiss. This was a decent match, but far from the best these two can say. But the basic TV pace of the contest never sold that either had this in hand before Zarya's interference. It was good to see that NXT's not moving from Rooker v Zarya yet, as it's still a very hot angle. Hopefully the rematch will allow Zarya to pick up the needed win and build up the ranks. On the other hand, a big win for Dame, even though it was tainted, and she could be a potential challenger. Who knows? But yeah, I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10. Moving on then to Keanu Carver versus Jasper Troy versus Josh Briggs. Carver's the most dominant man in this contest early on. A double chokeslam on Troy from his two rivals, though. Briggs taunted both men throughout, showing on his playing on their angle, while the resilience of Troy helped him find his way back into the contest. Carver pounced Troy on the ring, then pounced Briggs, followed by a Falcon Arrow for the win. A fun battle of the big men, even though it wasn't clean. They kept the pace moving. Carver and Troy's inexperience was obvious in moments, but it was also clear why NXT is pushing both men at the moment, given their size, presence, and the explosive offense. Carver picked up wins in back-to-back matches, keeping up the momentum. However, because he pinned Briggs, it's not likely to be done with Troy. NXT should stick with the strategy of pushing Carver rather than giving Troy a win back, because yeah, I think he could go for the top title. 6 out of 10. As we then moved on to that Darkseid versus the four men involved in that title match. Darkseid started slow but began finding their chemistry again, isolated, wearing down their opponents. As they isolated Hendry, Lennox took a cheap shot at Hendry before Bourne arrived to run off Lennox. They allowed D'Angelo the hot tag, and the champ sent the three remaining members of Darkseid flying and nearly won with a forget about it on Sugars. Hendry helped clear the ring, setting the stage for a spear and a spine buster. Page got the blind tag to attack the champ and won the twisted grin on Sugars. Afterwards, D'Angelo laid out Page and stood tall with the NXT title. Darkseid is back in full force, only to immediately lose. What's the point? If we could really have a delivering a good tag match, it would be fine because they would get in the ring. It also helped solidify Page as a problem for D'Angelo and potentially his first challenger. Still, Darkseid did not need to be fed to top guys again like they were in 2025 when the group still has a bright future. At this stage, a dramatic change would be needed to believe Darkseid are really credible. So yeah, for the match itself, I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10, but I'm not a fan of Darkseid's booking. We then got the Men's Speed Championship tournament, Lexis King versus Chaz Hall. This was all Starboy for the first 2 minutes, but King saw the opening when he caught Hall diving with a boot and hit the coronation for the victory. Even the best speed matches can only deliver so much, and this was the best that these coming off. But clearly NXT wants to highlight the debuting Starboy, so King bumped for him all the way through where the veteran until he prevailed. It made sense for King to advance for the sake of Birthright's credibility, and it would not be shocking for him to capture the title. It would be nice to see more from Starboy, but hopefully we get that soon or on Evolve. So yeah, overall I'm going to 4 out of 10. Moving on into Tatum Paxton and Shalala Hill versus Bate Monroe and Jackson Drake. Monroe arrived with a fake North American title and fought over who was the rival champion with Tatum to start. The Glamour quickly lost her desire to fight the champ, trying to walk out until Paxley dragged her back. Drake saved Monroe for a psycho trap, which set off a 4-way brawl that ended with a side-by-side chicken wing, barely escaping the submission. With the help of Brad Bader and Ricky Smokes taking out Hill, Drake distracted Paxley for a glamour shot and the win for Monroe. The dynamics of these mixed tag matches work wonders for a fairly predictable match, delivering the best action of the night by a solid margin. Hill is such a weird, wild energy, but Paxley is the only one on the roster that's been truly able to match his freight. Monroe and Drake have immediate chemistry, and that translates into the ring. So yeah, I think they could be a good pairing. The only way NXT was booking this match was set up a win for the Glamour, and that was the best option. They should keep leaning into Monroe and Paxley. So yeah, 8 out of 10 from me. We then moved on to Lola Vice, talking about her journey to the women's title, putting MMA behind her, and her humbling experience in NXT. Fatal influence tried to talk down about the win of Vice. JC Jane demanded a rematch, and Robert Stone announced it would happen next week. Face of Influence tried to lay out Vice, but the NXT champion sent all three packing. This was happily finished in a night that was hardly any of the fault for women. They got a tight window to deliver the promo, and it had to talk over a loud crowd. A bad spot for the segment, and it would have done better earlier in the night with more time to breathe. Vice delivered a fine babyface speech after running away to the top, and it should be a good rematch. It's unnecessary though for Vice to lay out all the Fatal Influence, and just adds additional heat for the former world champion ahead of a likely loss next week. So I'm not sure about that decision. Overall, NXT this week gets a 4 out of 10 from me. After a strong night of action with plenty of surprises that stand deliver, NXT didn't really deliver the aftermath. In particular, the show reaffirmed the same views without really building into anything new. Hopefully, the 2-week event, NXT Revenge, will kind of build on some new shows. For this show alone, though, the bright spots were Keanu Carver's heavyweight victory and the fun dynamic of Paxley and Shalilah Hill versus Monroe Jackson. The rest was forgettable and relied heavily upon the 2-week event coming up. So yeah, kind of giving us a bit of a lackluster show this week. Hey guys, that's it for this video. Thanks very much for watching. Remember to like, share, subscribe, follow us on our socials, link in the description below for daily wrestling news, meme and content. Subscribe to our other channels on screen right now, that'd be greatly appreciated. Thanks very much for watching. Peace out.